moonbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave all worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me.
Good morning. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. I am Catherine Bell, and this is the Dream Journal, a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of your nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. Today's musical creation is Prevelation. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Are you looking to find deeper meaning in a beautiful yet confounding world? Join us today as we talk with Transformational Coach Christine Barrington about humanity's future, starting with Carl Jung, moving through breathwork and alternative states of consciousness. This is Catherine Bell of Experiential Dream Work, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a podcast, so you can look for that in all of your regular podcast places, or you can go to the KSQD website, where you can find it at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Look for the Dream Journal, review it, subscribe, and most importantly, tell your friends. It'll get a conversation started about dreams, and what else would you rather be talking about anyway? So I'm going to start with my personal dream work, speaking of talking about dreams. So I believe last time I shared the dream about setting the kitchen on fire, which was, it seems to be fire has been a theme for me lately. So I had another dream about fire in the same little sequence of dreams over the course of about a week. And in this dream, I see that there's a store on fire. It's just some kind of anonymous store, and there's like flames belching out of the store. And for some reason, I decide I'm going to go drive my van right up next to that and park it right next to the flames. And so I'm like, oh, I do that, and I hop out of the van and walk away and look at the flames kind of reaching toward the van. And then I realize there's firefighters here, and I have this like moment of doubt, like, oh no, well, wait a minute, maybe those firefighters need access to the store, and my van's blocking it. So I have this whole complicated line of thought about what I'm going to do to get the van out of there. The firefighters don't look perturbed at all. They're just kind of like looking at me going, well, it's okay. I'm not worried. Are you worried? No, it's fine. And, I've noticed a theme that the firefighters who show up in my dreams are not really looking to put out the fires. If anything, they seem to be like maybe fighting with fire, like as if they're bringing the fire to me. And they're kind of encouraging me to step into the fire. I had a dream where that happened, and to live with the fire and to embrace the fire, as scary as it is. And it brings me to my own fire. Like, is there, passion and heart and energy and enthusiasm? Is there some way that this fire is benefiting me? And I know it at some level when I park the van over there, which is my camping van that I love to go camping trips. And then I have a moment of doubt. But that's okay. We all have moments of doubt. But there's something about the fire that's really just blazing up in my life lately. And it's as scary as it is, there's something here that is helpful. And I'm really grateful for that fire. Who would have thought it? Today, as usual, I'll be inviting call-ins during the last 20 minutes of the show, so you can jot down the number. The number is 831-900-5773, but don't call right now. In about 30 minutes, we'll open up the phones. But if you do want to contact us, you can send us an email at any time to onair@ksqd.org. That's ONAIR at ksqd.org. And Rick is here engineering, so grateful for that. And he will be looking at the emails, and if anything comes in, he'll let us know. Rick is also the creator of this beautiful music in the background, Prevelation. So today, our guest is in the studio. Imagine that. How long has it been? Like multiple years, I think, at this point. And it's Christine Barrington, who is a K-Squid programmer. Hello, Christine.
Hello.
Oh, I love it. So Christine Barrington is a transformational coach and supports individuals and groups to engage with their inner world through exploring dreams, art, and inner visioning in order to effect potent positive change in their lives. She is highly trained in depth psychology and trauma resolution techniques and uses somatic experiencing as a basis for deep listening into the non-rational sources of wisdom that reside in the embodied subconscious. Join us and hear how she combines these multiple modalities in the service of unlocking her dreams. And Christine's webpage is bodybroadcasts.com. So Christine, you have been on the show before, so welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a total joy to be in conversation about this topic, right? Dreams, this greater reality that dreams can reflect back to us.
Absolutely.
If we engage them.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does feel like there's kind of opening up the door to another realm when we go to sleep. And there's something when we switch off our conscious mind or when it drifts away into quiescence that we kind of open the door into another kind of reality.
That's perfect. That's a perfect entree. Yeah, it's a portal to another reality. And what we make of that and how we understand that reality plays a big part in what that can unlock for us here in this dimension.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christine is here and has a journey all lined up for us, and I'm very excited. She wants to talk about a NASA scientist, I believe, is what you've said. And I wonder if you wanted to go ahead and
let's launch.
Let's begin.
Yeah. Well, what interests me is where we're going as a species, where we're going on this precious, beautiful planet. And we're here at this incredibly dire moment. And I think about so first I'm just going to come really clean and say that Carl Jung is a very beloved being in my world. I discovered him in my early 20s, and he's been an enormous influence. I have deep respect for what he intuited, and he's had, as we know, an enormous influence on our culture, often in ways that people aren't even aware of. And he said two things that relate to what I hope to address today. One was, if we want to avoid World War III, everyone is going to have to go to the collective pool of shadow, right? Of what we've relegated to the darkness, is one way to put it, right? And we have to take back our own portion of the shadow if we want to avoid World War III. And I think we are entering World War III, and it's not a world of bombs. It's a world of our inability to face the climate crisis, right. Okay? Our inability to come together. Why can't we come together? Look at all the shadow elements that are getting unleashed and inspired through the use of media, how quickly triggered people are, how they, and the reactivity we're seeing in our culture, the polarization, the division. So we're not coming together to meet this moment.
Well, it does seem that the shadow is very prevalent in our society now, and that people, well, like as you mentioned, social media, people will just like blurt out and say something really mean and judgmental, which they never would say to someone's face. And so there's something that just comes out of the subconscious, that comes out of our biases, and it's there even among friends and family.
Right, right. That psychological reactivity. And so Jung talked about the collective unconscious. And one of the reasons my website is called Body Broadcasts is about what we are gets broadcasted out into the world. You and I are impacting each other's nervous systems right now. And also it goes into the collective consciousness. And what we're seeing unfolding in the world is the collective result of who we all are in this moment. And it's not looking good. But there's a lot of goodness happening. There's so much positive action, people, beautiful people coming forward to do good on behalf of others. And then there are these opposing forces that are splintering. And so this brings me to the second quote of Carl Jung. It's very important. He said that when every culture is actually organized around a story, right? There's a collective myth. And those myths evolve over time. And when one myth is dying and a new organizing myth is being born, we enter a time of terrible chaos and destruction, because we kind of have to disintegrate a bit like a butterfly before we come back together. And there are many, one of the organizing myths that's dying is that, the Christian myth. And also, that the Newtonian myth, right? And we're entering into, I believe that with Freud and Jung and the very strong psychologies they birthed into the world, it was a beginning of this new myth, and it's a revolution. And to me, at the core of this revolution is us understanding that we are part of something that's very real. And it's a much, much bigger than what most human beings can even conceive of. Okay?
I just want to throw in, I heard recently that somebody was talking about the travails of the world and likening it to pregnancy and morning sickness, and that it feels like there's disease and there is a lot of discomfort, but maybe there's something really new getting ready to be born.
Yes, I believe that's trying to happen. And I believe that in order for us to really meet a moment, we have to be very real and also very hopeful. And when a child is being born, sometimes the mother dies.
It's true. And
so there's no guarantee. We need to understand there's no guarantee we're going to get through this. But I believe that, as Jung put forward, each of us working on our own individual quality of our consciousness is the decisive factor. Okay? And so with this birth of psychology and Jung saying, those who look inside merely dream, and those who look outside merely dream, but those who look inside awaken, right? This gets repeated over and over again, but it's this really seminal idea. And I want to bunny hop forward to a whole group of people that are exploring what I believe Jung labeled the psyche, which is non-physical reality. So there are groups all over the world who do something that a lot of people might mock and laugh at, but it's really, they call it out-of-body travel or astral travel. And the people that I want to talk about today are the folks over at the Monroe Institute in Virginia. And I want to introduce the story of how that institute got started. So Robert Monroe, interestingly enough, was a sound engineer and a businessman who owned radio stations.
There we are.
And the radio metaphor actually is very central. It's very interesting. And he was a straight up guy, made really good money, super successful, classic American businessman. And then somewhere in his late 40s, one day he was laying down to take a nap, and this energy, this energy just started vibrating in his body, and it really frightened him. Wow. And he kind of clamped down on it and immediately made an appointment with his doctor. And he was like, something's happening to me every time, often when I lay down and I start relaxing, these vibrations come through. And I think I'm going crazy. And they ran all these tests and they found nothing wrong. And, over a couple of years' time, they sent him to, psychiatrists and all kinds of specialists, and nobody could find anything wrong. And he didn't want to take drugs. And finally, his physician, who was a good friend, said to him, "You're healthy. You're solid. How about you just relax and go with it and see what happens?" So Robert did. And the next time these vibrations came, he just relaxed and let go. And he's like, and the next thing I knew, I was out of my body and looking at myself on the couch. And so he began this series for over a number of years, like traveling out of body and having, interesting experiences and researching and trying to find out, like, what the heck is going on? And he discovered the whole New Age community. And he's like, God bless him. They made me feel not crazy. He's like, but I just didn't like hanging out with them because they're so ungrounded.
Oh, yeah.
And he's
a scientist.
He's a scientist.
Yes,
so he's like, I'm going to have to go my own way, and I'm going to have to approach this like a scientist as best I can. So he started taking notes, the time of day that he was lying down, and then he would go on his journeys. He would collect data. He would note the time he came back. He started conducting experiments like, can I use my intention? And he started realizing, like, he could use his intention to go specific places, but he noticed that when he was out of his body, he was encountering much more of his being outside of his personality, and that greater. So let's go back to Jung a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you read Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung's autobiography, he talks about at a very young age realizing he had a number one and a number two personality. That's what he called it. He's like, there's this one part of me that I kind of recognize as being a part of this earth-centered, grounded physical world. And then there's this whole other side of me that feels much, much bigger and quite other. So Jung, was preternaturally perceptive, and he noticed that at a very young age. So he called it his number one and number two personalities. And that's what Bob was noticing. He's like, well, when I was out of body, that me kind of wanted to like go and do other things, then go try to visit Catherine and see, because what he was trying to intend to do is like, I'm going to go see Catherine. It's 10 a.m. Let's see what she's doing. I'm going to intend myself into her house and try to see if I can note a clock, try to see what she's doing, come back to my body, and then call her and be like, what were you just doing? Because he wanted to verify, am I really out of my body or am I just imagining it?
So that's the scientific approach to astral travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was able to do things like that and verify things for himself. So cut to the chase, about 8 to 10 years after all of this traveling, he decided, I'm going to have to come out of the closet as an out-of-body traveler. And he wrote a book. And, wow, now I can't remember. There's so many out-of-body books I've written, but it's like travels out of the body. And he published it. And he thought for sure, I'm going to be shunned by my business associates. I'm going to be shunned by my friends. The book came out, and he went to his first big kind of social gathering, and his business associates were there, and they were like, hey, Bob, like, wild times, man, really interesting book. And nobody shunned him, but he was like, I had to write this book in case somebody else was going through what I was going through. Now we're going to bunny hop over to NASA. Do you need to take a break?
I do. In fact, yes, you can see that. Lovely thing about in person here is we have eye contact.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. So we're going to find out about Monroe's NASA connections when we come back. But right now I want to play a little clip by the first element. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
I pushed my soul in a deep dark hole, and then I followed it in. I watched myself crawling out as I was crawling in. I got up so tight I couldn't unwind. I saw so much, I broke my mind. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in.
KSQD 90.7 FM, your ink spot on the dial. Community radio for all of us.
You are listening to the Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell, and my guest today is Christine Barrington. And we are talking today about a journey toward wholeness, we hope, the pregnancy of the planet and what will come of it. Will we survive or not? I want to hope that you're thinking about your own out-of-body experiences and getting ready to call, because in about 15 minutes we'll be opening up the phone. So you can jot down the number. It is 831 900-5773. That's 900-KSQD. And we will be taking calls in about 15 minutes. So my name is Catherine Bell. My guest is Christine Barrington.
Here I am.
All right.
Yeah, and I do believe that the inner exploration of our consciousness, our dreams, and how we relate to a much bigger reality is going to be the defining value that's going to perhaps help us transition through this crisis into something much, much better. And so I do feel that the people at the Monroe Institute and others like them, there are other out-of-body organizations, are really helping people to develop the skills to explore other realities with integrity and with a scientific attitude.
Right.
It's not exactly science because you can't do double-blind experiments, but you can have integrity with your own experience, right? So I was telling you about Bob Monroe and how the Monroe Institute got started, and it's very much related to physicists and people at NASA. So what happened? Bob Monroe published his book, and he didn't know anyone over at NASA, but what happened was there was a manager of a division at NASA, and he read the book. And like a good scientist, he didn't laugh at it. He got curious. And so he gathered his team, and his team was mostly young physicists and engineers, and he each gave them a copy. And he said to them, I want you to read this book and come back and tell me what you think. And one of those individuals was a young physicist named Thomas Campbell. And he read the book, and he came back to his manager, and he said, well, it's one of three things. This guy's A, nuts, 2, very creative and wants to make a buck selling of some books, or 3, he's the real thing. And if this is true, it changes everything. So what this manager did is he got all the feedback, and everybody in the team was really curious, and they're like, let's find this guy and go see him. And they discovered that he was not far away in Virginia. They hired a couple of vans, piled the whole team in, and went to Monroe's estate, this beautiful estate in Virginia, met with him and Thomas, and checked him out. And he's like, wow, this guy's not crazy. And so Bob said to all these scientists, look, I want to build a lab. I want to bring people in, teach them how to travel out of body, collect data, and I want to approach this as scientifically as possible, but I don't know how to build a lab. Anybody here will want to do this with me? And the two youngest individuals, probably no surprise, they were young. Thomas and an engineer named Dennis Metternich said, we'll do it. And so Thomas was like, and within a month, Thomas had a deep meditative practice going already. He started in college, and he's like, within a month, we were traveling out of body, and we built this lab, and long story short, became this amazing institute. I could talk a lot about it, but we don't have a ton of time. Thomas then spent the decades of his life traveling out of body regularly at night. And so the thing about dreams, okay, when we go to sleep at night, we lose contact with our 5 senses. When you can disconnect with your 5 senses, you can then begin to perceive other dimensions. If you can do this while you're awake, your body's asleep, but your mind and your consciousness is awake, you can travel. And when we dream, that's what we're doing, but we're not in control unless you're doing what Robert Wagner teaches people to do, which is lucid dreaming. And a lot of people go from lucid dreaming to out-of-body experiences.
Right, while they're sleeping, while they're dreaming.
While their body's sleeping, but they're conscious. Yeah. When you're lucid dreaming, your body's asleep, but you're conscious. And so then after many decades, Thomas is now in his 70s, and he's published an 800-page trilogy. And he's like, look, I'm a scientist. So what I love about Thomas is that he's like, I'm going to tell you what I've experienced. And I do not want you to believe me. What? Do not believe me. I want you to read this with an attitude of open-minded skepticism. Learn how to meditate. Learn how to travel yourself. Conduct your own experiences and learn for yourself. That is the only way. And he said, but let me tell you, he's like, you don't have to travel out of body. to do what you need to do here on earth. But he's like, this is what I have learned, and this is for your consideration. The planet Earth is a virtual simulator. It is where, so he's like, he doesn't use terms like God or source consciousness. He has all kinds of acronyms, which is what scientists do. So he's like, there's an original consciousness, and he's like, it's real. He's like, infinite doesn't apply. He's like, infinity is not a real thing. This is like a real something. But he said it's out of any comprehension that you could ever have. It's big, it's ancient, and he's like, there's only two fundamentals: consciousness and the process of evolution. And so you are either going forward in the evolutionary process, or you're failing to evolve and you're going backward toward disintegration. And consciousness itself has been evolving itself forward. And I could get into the weeds here. It's 800 pages, a lot of the nature of time, all kinds of fascinating stuff. But he's like, if you're on Earth, you are a young bit of consciousness. So what consciousness, he calls it the absolute unbounded manifold. We could call it source consciousness to make it easier on a lot of us. He's like, it splits off parts of itself and says, you go evolve, and your evolution contributes to my evolution. And it's not talking to us like this, but this is our little human way of talking about this.
Well, can I jump in? The
Please.
way that I've been introduced to this concept is, I think they call it the sea of consciousness, which is that all material and everything that exists arises out of a sea of consciousness. That there's this idea that people have that consciousness is the result of evolution. That's only something the most evolved beings have between humans. But then we can flip it on its head and say maybe we start with consciousness, and that things kind of evolve up out of this sea of consciousness. Like a rock only evolves up a little ways, and living creatures evolve up more, and humans maybe a stronger ways of channeling this sea of consciousness. But it's like that the consciousness is the ground of everything, and that matter is just a manifestation of that. And so then our consciousness is not then a surprise. It's not an emergent property. It's actually...
It's a fundamental.
It's a fundamental, yes.
It's the fundamental, right. And a lot of the early quantum physicists sensed that, understood it, and they're like, well, consciousness is in here. We don't quite understand. Like, there's a really great book called Quantum Questions, edited by Ken Wilbur. And it's the collected writings of all the early quantum physicists of the 20th century. They're mystical writings, okay? They were all pretty mystical, meaning they were pretty open. Like, if you read a lot of the writings of Einstein, he's talking about, something beyond physical reality. We could have a whole show on that. It's really beautiful stuff. But the point is Thomas is like, there is this sea of consciousness, and it splits off bits of itself and says, you go on an evolutionary adventure, and your forward evolution contributes to the total. Now, Jung talked about this in his book, Answer to Job. It's exactly the intuitive conclusion Jung came to. But it's a wacky book. Well, I love anything Jung's written, but you have to be very open-minded, and it's very challenging to read. But that's the essential message in Answer to Job. We evolve God. So what Thomas Campbell said is, if you're on Earth, if you're in a physical reality, you're in kindergarten. He's like, and boy, when you read his books, he's Scottish, of Scottish descent. He's very, very funny, and he really pokes a lot of fun at the human ego and about the dogma of scientists and academia. And, he's like, you've got to be super open-minded and really, really curious. And you're really important, and you're really not very important. Sorry. But what we're doing here is important. And he's like, so here's the deal. You are here to grow up by becoming more love. More love. And he's like, and love is not an emotion. Love is a state, an energetic state of very low entropy. So he puts everything into terms of high entropy versus low entropy. So he's like, as you evolve forward, and reincarnation is an absolute requirement for evolution of consciousness. You can only learn so much in a lifetime, and then you've got to reboot. So he's like, we are our bodies, this personality, Christine, he's like, that's an avatar. That is not really who you are. Who you are is the consciousness that's evolving. So you come into an avatar to learn, and this present situation is going to teach you a lot of things, and then you'll come to an end and you'll die, and you'll come back in and learn a bunch of new lessons in a different context. And over time, and he's like, you are arranging your own teaching. You are in charge of your evolution, and you can't do it wrong. You can only do it long. Okay? Not his words, but
okay,
yeah, but I love that. You can't do it wrong. You can only do it long.
Oh, well, I'm finding this is really exciting because I've definitely had this sense that the most important activism I do is my personal growth. And this really is speaking exactly to that. And that this is, acting in the world is also vital, but there's something that's really integral that you can't, if you have to either be an activist in the world or be an activist in your own mind, pick your mind and grow yourself up.
Yes. So he's like, what your consciousness learns through its own experiences over time is that high states of inner organization, the things that we associate with qualities of highly evolved beings, like the Buddha, like what we may imagine the Christ to be, the Dalai Lama, he's like kindness, a steadiness of being. It's a high organized state. And the more you evolve as a consciousness, the lower your entropy, the lower the chaos in your system. And he's like, and when you get into really low entropy states, they are experienced as these incredible energy fields that he's like, human beings just can't help but say it was so loving. So one of the things that I also do is I've read thousands of near-death experiences. And people are always talking about, like, I died, most of them, very few are negative. Most of them are like, and I went into this place and it was so amazing and it was all love. And he's like, yeah, that's because you're in these other dimensions where there are more evolved consciousnesses. Remember, so the model of reality is he's like, we are in nested dimensions. So like galaxies have local groups, right? He's like, we are part of a local group of non-physical dimensions and a physical dimension. And this physical dimension is this Earth school. But he's like, there are many, many, many other of these happening because this is through experimentation, consciousness has discovered that this is the best way to get consciousnesses to grow effectively and keep them growing. He's like, when you are in non-physical reality, it's a completely thought-responsive world. So in our dreams, he's like, and he talks about dreams, and he's like, dreams are a particular dimension. And he's like, and you go into these thought-responsive dimensions, and they're reflecting to you mostly your subjective reality. Sound familiar? It's a lot like dreams.
Exactly.
And he's like, and that's because it's exactly what's going on. So if you are not a disciplined being, if you are not a disciplined consciousness who knows how to act like a good scientist does, and he's like, and a good scientist is open-minded and curious and skeptical and is always questioning, trying things out, collecting data, and having integrity. And he's like, if you aren't disciplined, you go out into these other thought-responsive realities, you can experience really scary things. So there's all these kind of gates, right? So people will talk about like trying to travel out of body, and they go through this vibrational state. And Thomas Campbell's like, yeah, you just need to meditate and shift. But he's like, the reason most people have to go through the vibrational state is so they can overcome fear. So he's like, the number one way you evolve is you deal with your fear. Your fears are what you have to face in order to evolve the quality of your consciousness.
Wow, and that's so much what the dreams bring is the things that we fear, the things that we're like, the fire in the dreams that I was talking about. It's like I'm afraid of this fire, and yet this is something very vital part of me, maybe part of my consciousness that I'm learning to have a relationship with.
Right, right. When you were sharing that dream, what I was projecting onto the firefighters was this image of the fire tenders.
Yes.
And, and how indigenous people will do controlled burns, right? But they really know what they're doing, and they like set up the conditions, and they're like, well, we're going to unleash fire, but we're going to hang out and watch it, and they know what they're doing, and they're pretty calm about it. And that's what arose for me when you shared your dream.
Right. Yeah, that's very much the way that they looked. They were just like, oh, this is just a fire, nothing to be afraid of. It's just fire.
And an integral part of the ecosystem health, right? We've got to burn up those parts of us.
Yeah.
And like Jung talked about turning inward and warming those parts of us that need attention, warming it with the fires of our attention. Ooh. I love that phrase.
Fires of our attention.
Yeah. Warming it. That's very loving. We're going to warm it up. And we've got to burn through our fears. And we can do that our dreams. So Jung was always talking about how dreams are complementary. So he's like, look, man, I can tell you all your complexes. Tell me one dream and I'll tell you all your complexes.
It's all right there.
It's all, which is why, like, if you said, hey, like, share your dream from last night, I'd probably be nervous to do it because I always feel like it makes me feel naked. I'm like, well, everyone's going to know my issues now because it's super obvious. But he said dreams are also there to help integrate us and make us whole. If you look at those issues and you really work with them, they're going to complete you. They're going to help you integrate your being. Right? And we need our wholeness to meet this moment. And what Thomas Campbell will say is, we're not going to have all of our potential available to us if we are not able to entertain the metaphysical with some integrity. And right now, the world of academia and science are incredibly derisive. Anything that comes anywhere near the metaphysical, they jump on it with a lot of attitude, and understandably, right? Because it has this perfume of religion, and religious dogma was so destructive.
Well, thank you. This is Christine Barrington. I want to open up the phones. I am just totally riveted by this conversation. With Tony Russomanno is here in the studio, available to take your calls. So if you have a question or an experience to share, we'd love to hear from you. The number is 831-900-5773, and the phones are now open. So pick up the phone and give us a call. The number again is 831-900-5773, and the phones are open. This is the Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell, and we are speaking today about, so many things, consciousness and the future of humanity. And with our guest, Christine Barrington, and this is The Squid. You're listening to K-Squid, 90.7 FM, streaming live at ksqd.org. And now we're going to play this piece of a song called Lovely, Lovely Day by Yaya's Kitchen.
That I cried last night, had a wild ride with the curtain side again, saw that it was only unseen, a little bit of love in the cotton seed.
This is the Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell, and our guest today is Christine Barrington. The phone is now open. You can give us a call. The number is 831-900-5773, and it seems like we indeed have a caller on the line. Definitely a hot topic. So hello, caller.
Hello?
Yes. Oh, is this Lucille?
Yeah.
Hey, good to hear from you. Lucille from Cambria. Thanks for calling in.
So I had a call on this one.
Yeah.
Topic, because in what I wanted to share, bring up, it has to do with the 9 dimensions that I studied with Esther Hicks and it was another author, and it was talking about meditation on the different dimensions. That we have the first dimension with the earth core and on up, and it has to do with meditation getting into your body, of course.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that book that I connected with, I never felt so elevated and so good in my life. And somewhere along the line, because I was alone in this, I, just sort of sauntered back to, not being supported in anything that I was experiencing. So it kind of took me off my path again. And because I also believe in the intensity of geometry and shapes.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to share with you something that was happening to me when I was listening to you two.
Yeah.
It kept stopping.
Oh,
and I had
the radio?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was like another entity was trying. I wasn't able to hear everything that you two were saying.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm sorry that the connection there, well, maybe, as you said, there are spirits involved.
Right.
So, yeah, this 9 dimensions, this is something I don't know much about. Do you know anything about this, Christine?
Well, we're going to turn Lucille down. Thank you, Rick. Well, what I would say is that what is clear is that there's many, many, many dimensions. Yeah. Okay. And one of the things I love about Thomas Campbell is he said, I'm going to present to you my experience. But he's like, I guarantee you there are many, many ways to understand this and experience it. If you're a Tibetan, you're going to have one way to explain what you've experienced. So there's many, many pathways into this, into our wider ecosystem that includes non-physical reality. So I haven't experienced this particular meditation. But here's the thing, coming back to my buddy Jung, he says, the truth is what works. The truth is what helps you live.
Okay.
And it's highly subjective. And it drove Erich Fromm crazy, like hated that. He's like, that's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. Like the truth is objective. And Thomas Campbell will say, actually, it's not. You can reach a sort of range of objectivity. And that's really valuable for certain things. But he's like, the biggest reality is it's just huge. And he's like, and your chance of understanding what's really going on is like thinking a friendly flora in your gut can understand what's going on at the UN. He's like, it's really, really huge.
Right.
But he's like, but there is much that we can understand within our local group. And we are in an ecosystem, and he's like, a non-physical reality has a huge influence on what's going here in our physical reality. So yes, Lucille, being able to meditate and have like-minded people to help you out. So I'm going to go back to the Monroe Institute, because what Thomas Campbell and the people that teach at the Monroe Institute teach people is he's like, this is like an equivalent of an IP address. There are these very specific locales that you can go to. And once you can feel it.
In an outer body way.
He's like, they're real locales. And he's like, and once you get the feel and you get the feeling, which is why I do somatic work, right? When you are expert at feeling what's happening in your system, you become expert of having a skill of feeling. People that are highly intellectual are up in their heads, and they almost never can name sensations in their body or their emotions. And this is a hindrance. So you feel these locales, and they teach you how to do it at the Monroe Institute. They train you, and you can go to these different dimensions. So it might be similar to these 9 meditations, but there's just a lot going on.
Right.
So.
Well, it reminds me of the 5 blind men and the elephant.
That's exactly right.
If you're feeling the foot, it's one thing. If you're feeling the trunk, it's very different. Or the tail. I want to go back to Lucille. We had to turn you down a little because of the echo, but I want to go back to you, Lucille, because I'm particularly sensitive that you were saying you were feeling alone in some of your explorations.
Well, but on the other hand, before I get into that, I do want to say to Christine is I went to Pacifica Graduate Institute and I studied Jung, and I'm right with you. I love that guy, and I when I went to graduated and I studied depth psychology, it opened up a whole new life for me. And so I understand every single thing you have said today. And recently I was able to connect with this one person who's, getting her PhD in somatics.
Ah.
And she was willing to, she asked me if she could just meet with me once a month, on Zoom, and work with me, and it's all about getting in touch with your body, just like you explained, and the techniques that she has been showing me, it's different than tapping, but it's amazing how you can release the tension just by touching certain parts of your body.
Oh, wow.
Now the one thing, the major thing I need to that's difficult for me is meditation, because I guess I just have trouble staying still, and the only place I get my, not the only place I get my high spirit is when I go visit my beaches. And I've told Catherine about this one beach I go to. Feels very. I'm very connected with this, and I find little treasures, and I just find myself when I go there.
Right. Well, there can be a lot of grounding that happens when we go to beautiful places, especially out in nature. Christine, I'm thinking about meditation. I wonder if there's some way that you could maybe offer some suggestions to the listeners to get started. Because like Lucille, I also have found meditation to be easier said than done.
I have a really great resource. This brings me into breath. And one of the most fundamental ways that meditation is taught is actually meditating on the breath. And but one of the problems with just meditating on the breath, it's really great, but a lot of times we have blocks. Our body holds our memories. So, ironically, we're talking about sort of out-of-body stuff, but the condition of our relationship to our body and what we hold in our body determines a lot of what we can experience energetically. And so doing our healing work and working with the body is very important. And breath work is really powerful. And so there is a book, it's called The Miracle of the Breath by Andy Caponigro. And he's passed away, and he used to have a whole website and workshops. He was amazing. And all that's left of his body of work is this marvelous book, which teaches very simple and accessible breathwork techniques where you learn to meditate on your breath, and then you can do releasing techniques, balancing, then grounding and strengthening techniques, and then really deep healing, energetic techniques, but very, very simple. And he studied breath work in all the cultures around the world and distilled this down to really, really simple stuff. And I am trained in rebirthing breath work. And when you do really, really deep breathing, where you're moving the energy through your body in a really high volume, you come up against all your blocks. And this is a releasing technique, and it can be amazing. And I've had some of my most profound visionary experiences doing breath work. I recommend it. However, this is largely releasing techniques. And if you have a nervous system that's not balanced, if you do too much of it, it can really do damage. So while I recommend having some of these experiences, I now really am loving this dedicated cycling through meditation, releasing work, balancing work, grounding and strengthening work, and then cycling back through. I see inner growth as like the model for me is a spiral galaxy. Mm-hmm. And at the core of many, many galaxies is a black hole. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so what I tell people is when you're doing, inner work and healing work, you want to start at the outer arms of the galaxy and work your way toward that core. You don't want to try to go toward your core issues too directly. So what you do are, you release a bit, you strengthen a bit, you build strength, you do psychoeducation, you build skills, then you cycle back around and you're like, oh, here's this issue, but I'm stronger now. Mm-hmm. And then you build some more and you train some more. And then after you've grown for a long time and built up all these different capacities, then you can move through the black hole of your core issues and not get ripped apart by the forces of it.
And I think dreaming must be a big part of this, because dreamings are always kind of pecking away at our issues.
Pecking away.
Yes. Like rain. There's some beautiful quote from a poem about the dreams come like rain. They kind of erode gently our issues.
Lovely.
And they just contribute to our growth so often. And I find that that's a really key part of moving closer. And I'm actually excited because my work as a NASA scientist involved accretion disks, which are disks where material is spiraling inward, that if you throw something directly at a gravity mass, whether it's a black hole or just a very large star, it'll most likely boomerang right back out. It can't get in there unless it loses a bunch of angular momentum. And the way that we lose that angular momentum is through viscosity and dissipating through friction. And so we use this friction to slow our speed, to get rid of the angular momentum, to spiral into the center. And so maybe all these processes we're doing, the meditation and the dream work and the work in communities that we do, helps us to work out our issues so that we can approach the center, but approach it gradually and slowly so that we can really connect with the center and not just get kicked right back out.
That's beautiful. I'm going to go back and listen to the archive and write all that. So well said. And there's a reason that these models, these images, work, right? Like, we're all connected. Everything about us is reflected in the cosmos, and it's really beautiful.
It is.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say one more word to Lucille. We have to say goodbye, and I'm so glad that you called in, Lucille. Oh, hang on.
It was great, and I love this. Thank you for everything that you brought forth today.
Thank you, Lucille. This has been an amazing show, and you're a wonderful part of it.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye now. So, Christine, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
They can email me at bodybroadcasts@gmail.com.
That's a plural. Body broadcasts is a plural.com.
Bodybroadcasts
at gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
And then you also have the webpage called Body Broadcasts.
I do, and I need to completely redo it.
Okay.
But people can reach me there.
Okay.
And I would love to hear from anyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there what particular? Do you have some final thoughts you'd like to share with our guests?
Absolutely. We live in a golden age of resource. There's been an explosion of knowledge around how to know ourselves, how to improve the quality of our consciousness. There's so many resources, and I want to pivot just really quickly to Robert Wagner's work with lucid dreaming, and he talks about that there's belief, focus, will, intention, and expectation, right? And so with psychology and all the understanding about the psyche that's come in the last 100 years, what we believe, like one of Robert's guides in his dream said, you are what you allow yourself to be. So my closing shot would be, allow yourself to consider that you are an enormously huge and ancient consciousness, and you are here in this challenging earth school to learn something, dig into those resources, learn, grow, and be joyful. There's a much bigger thing going on, and with that joy, then we can embrace each other and rise up in this moment and love our planet, and maybe get through this moment of dire, beauty.
Right. We need some midwifery here.
And we each of us can be that midwife.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Christine Barrington. So lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. What a joy. Yeah.
So next week we will have on another recent Institute of Dream Studies graduate. Christine is not one, but we've had several in the last month. And this next week will be Sharon Pastore. We'll be talking with her about how dreams can help on your career path, plus how to use dreams as songwriting inspiration. And she's already sent me links to some of her own songs that she's written, which are quite inspiring and energetic. And I'm going to play some of them in their entirety next week. And then the following week, after that, will be the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I'm going to do an all-caller show, a big gratitude show. So get your big questions ready and your dreams to share. In 2 weeks from today, we'll be doing an all-caller show. And so you can listen to the live broadcast any Saturday at 10 a.m. or catch the podcast replay, which, as always, will be released on the Monday following the show.
Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing.
Has been the Dream Journal. I am Catherine Bell, and this has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. And you can email me at catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. If you have a dream you're curious about, please contact me so I can sign you up for a free introductory dream consultation. Thank you to everyone who has left a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Feel free to leave your own review and tell your friends. I'd like to thank Rick Cleffel for creating the music and engineering, Tony Russamano for answering the phones, and Lucille for calling in. I'd really also like to thank the donors who support this station. It is 100% necessary that we get donors to continue. KSQD.org is the place to contribute, and tell them the Dream Journal sent you. When you wake up for tomorrow morning, take a minute to look within. Do you remember a dream? Write it down and bring it to the next Dream Journal. I am Catherine Bell, and you are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz.
And leave tomorrow behind.